Early Buddhism. 9. Taking of refuge. 1. Meaning of refuge, sarana. Sarana in Pali means refuge and is defined as a shelter or protection from danger or trouble, a person, thing, or course that provides protection. The late Most Venerable Ledi Sayadaw in his Uttama Purusatipani, defined sarana as follows. If one pays respect or reverence to a certain object or person, and if that act of respect or reverence amounts to a kusala kamma, wholesome action, which can save one from the danger of rebirth in the woeful plane, then that object or person amounts to sarana and thus is worthy of reverence and respect. On the other hand, if one pays respect or reverence to a certain object or person with the idea that it will save one from the danger of rebirth in the woeful plane, but in actual fact that act of respect or reverence does not amount to a kusala kamma of sufficient strength to possess the quality of saving one from rebirth in the woeful plane, then that object or person does not amount to a sarana and is not worthy of respect or reverence. The Venerable Sayadaw then proceeded to give a simile as follows. The virtues of untainted morality, sila, concentration, samadhi, and wisdom, panna, may be compared to the fertility in the soil. The refuge objects such as the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha may be compared to the soil itself wherein that quality of fertility exists. The volition, cetana, arising in the mind of an individual through taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha are like seeds planted in the fertile soil. Individuals or objects that do not possess untainted sila, samadhi, and panna, are like barren soil devoid of fertility. To approach them and to pay one's respect or reverence to them is like sowing one's seeds on barren soil. They do not amount to kusala kamma and thus are futile. 2. Origin of taking of refuge. According to the scriptures, soon after enlightenment the Buddha spent 7 days each at the Bodhi tree, as well as other places in the vicinity, namely, the goatherd's banyan tree, the Mukalinda tree and lastly, the Rajayatana tree. At the last location, 2 merchants, Tapyasa and Baluka from Ukala, Burma, offered him rice cake and honey. After the Buddha had accepted their offering and eaten it, the 2 merchants said, "We go for refuge to the Blessed One, Buddha, and to the law, Dhamma. Beginning from today let the Blessed One count us as followers who have gone to him for refuge for as long as breath lasts." Since they were the first followers in the world, they took only 2 refuges because the order of monks or Sangha was not yet established. Later the Buddha traveled to Deer Park in modern-day Sarnath where he preached the first sermon to the 5 ascetics who later attained arahantship. The Buddha also expounded his Dhamma to a rich young man, Yasa, and his 54 friends who joined the holy order and became arahants. Yasa's parents and his wife became Sotapannas and were the first lay disciples to take the 3 refuges of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha because the holy order had come into being. 3. Act of taking refuge. The act of taking refuge is the pathway of entry into the Buddha Sasana, Buddha's dispensation or teaching. After thrice reciting the opening salutation of Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sammasambuddhassa, which means homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Supremely Enlightened One, refuge is taken by reciting the formula of refuge 3 times. Buddham Saranam Gacchami, I go to the Buddha for refuge. Dhammam Saranam Gacchami, I go to the Dhamma for refuge. Sangham Saranam Gacchami, I go to the Sangha for refuge. Tudiyampi, Buddham Saranam Gacchami. For the 2nd time, I go to the Buddha for refuge. Tudiyampi, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. For the 2nd time, I go to the Dhamma for refuge. Tudiyampi, Sangham Saranam Gacchami. For the 2nd time, I go to the Sangha for refuge. Tatayampi, Buddham Saranam Gacchami. For the 3rd time, I go to the Buddha for refuge. Tatayampi, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. For the 3rd time, I go to the Dhamma for refuge. Tatayampi, Sangham Saranam Gacchami. For the 3rd time, I go to the Sangha for refuge. According to Kadakapatha commentary, the Buddha pronounced this formula in Deer Park, Isapatana for the purpose of admitting new disciples into the order when he dispatched the 60 arahants in various directions to spread the Dhamma. It is to be recited by the new disciple before admission into the order. 4. Why we need to take refuge. All beings, except the noble disciples who have realized the Four Noble Truths, are shrouded in ignorance and are generally unaware of the dangers of existence. Taking what is impermanent, non-self, and suffering as permanent, self and pleasurable. The Buddha arises in the world to teach beings the Four Noble Truths, the complete realization of which will liberate them from all kinds of suffering. A. Dangers of present life. According to the Noble Truth of suffering, birth leads to old age, disease, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. At any moment, our body is subject to disease, accident, and injury. Natural disasters such as fire, flood, drought, and earthquake can happen anytime and cause immense hardships and death. Everywhere, man is exposed to accidents, crime, exploitation, war, health hazards, economic failures, and all sorts of crises. Even if we can escape these dangers, there is one thing that we cannot escape from: death. Even then, we cannot be sure where or when death will strike. B. Dangers of future lives. The harm and dangers besetting us do not end with our death. According to Buddha's teaching, beings who have not eradicated craving are subject to rebirth that can take place either in happy or woeful states, namely, happy existences in the human or heavenly realms called Sugati, or woeful existences in hell, animal, ghost, and demon realms called Dugati. The danger of future lives is rebirth in the woeful states, not only because of their inherent suffering, but also because escape therefrom is extremely difficult. A fortunate rebirth depends on the performance of meritorious actions. Beings in the woeful states have very little opportunity to acquire merit, so the tendency is to be reborn again and again in such states. The Buddha states that, if a yolk with a hole were floating at random in the ocean, and a blind turtle living in the ocean were to surface once every 100 years, the chance of the turtle pushing his neck through the hole in the yolk would still be greater than that of a being in woeful destination regaining human status. Therefore, rebirth in the woeful state is a grave danger in future lives, from which we need protection. We cannot obliterate these woeful realms, so the only way is to avoid them. According to the law of karma, wholesome actions produce desirable results while unwholesome actions produce undesirable results. In order to avoid unhappy rebirth, we must avoid generating unwholesome karma. In this, we need the guidance of someone who truly understands how the law of karma operates. Even when we can discriminate right from wrong, our actions do not always follow the wholesome path because the mind is difficult to control. To learn the right course of discipline, we need guidance from someone who understands the subtle workings of the mind and who is able to teach us how to liberate the mind. C. Dangers of the general course of existence, samsara. The dangers to which we are exposed are much greater than those of the present life or the risk of a fall into the woeful state in future lives. The real danger is the suffering, existence after existence, of birth, aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Besides this intrinsic suffering, there is also suffering due to change and suffering due to the conditioned nature of existence. No relief can be found anywhere, neither in heaven nor in the form and formless realms, because life there is also impermanent and subject to conditions. This implies only one way of escape: to turn away from all forms of existence, even the most sublime. According to the noble truth of the origin of suffering, it is the craving for existence, bhavatanha, that causes rebirth, which in turn gives ground for craving to resume and perpetuate the cycle of samsara. At the hub of this wheel of existence is ignorance, avidya, the underlying cause of craving. To eradicate craving, the ignorance that supports it has to be dispelled by wisdom, the penetrating knowledge that allows us to see things as they really are. To develop such wisdom, we need the proper method and someone who can guide us. From the foregoing, we definitely need to take refuge to protect us from the three types of dangers threatening us. The commentary uses another Pali word himsati, to crush, to explain the word sarana, refuge, as follows. When people have gone for refuge, then by that very going for refuge, It crushes, dispels, removes, stops their fear, anguish, suffering, risk of unhappy rebirth and defilement. 5. The three refuges, Tisarana. In Buddhism, there are three refuges that together can provide protection from the three types of dangers mentioned. They are, the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. They are not separate refuges, each sufficient in itself but interrelated members of a single effective refuge. As a simple analogy, if we are sick and want to get well, we need a doctor to diagnose our sickness and prescribe a remedy. We need medicine to cure our sickness and we need attendants to look after our requirements. The doctor and attendants alone cannot cure us. The most they can do is to give the right medicine and make sure we take it. The medicine is the actual remedy that restores our health. Similarly, to seek relief from suffering, we rely on the Buddha as the physician who can find out the cause of our suffering and show us how to get well. The Dhamma is the medicine to cure our affliction and the Sangha are the attendants who help us to take the medicine. To get well, we must take the medicine ourselves. So to get rid of suffering, we must practice the Dhamma, for the Dhamma is the actual refuge that leads to the cessation of suffering. The efficacy of the act of taking refuge is proportional to the degree of understanding of the three refuges and our confidence in them. A. The Buddha refuge. Historically, the word Buddha refers to a person named Siddhartha Gautama who lived in India around the 5th century BC. When we take refuge in the Buddha, we take refuge in this person for he is the teacher and founder of Buddhism. However, in going to him for refuge, we do not take refuge in him merely in the physical being. The Buddha becomes a refuge because of his attainment of supreme enlightenment. He is also the enlightener of others. Those who realize this state are called Buddhas. This is the supramundane aspect of the refuge object. So when we take refuge in the Buddha, we rely on him as a refuge because he embodies supreme enlightenment or Buddhahood, which is the sum total of the qualities possessed by those who attain supreme enlightenment, namely, the destruction of all defilements totally, every defilement destroyed without residue, and finally, can never arise again. The acquisition of all virtues. Buddha's virtues are numerous but two stand out as paramount, great wisdom and great compassion, both of which he utilized for the welfare of others. When we take refuge in the Buddha, we resort to him as the supreme embodiment of purity, wisdom, and compassion, the peerless leader who can guide us to safety out of the perilous ocean of samsara. B. The Dhamma refuge. There are two aspects of the Dhamma, namely, the mundane level, signifying the teaching of the Buddha as found in scriptures called the Tipitaka. These teachings serve as guidelines for a course of practice called the Noble Eightfold Path, which consists of a mundane path and a supramundane path, the latter being reached at realization of the Four Noble Truths. The supramundane path consciousness uproots the associated defilements, arising only once at each of the four stages of enlightenment. Namely, Sotapanna, stream enterer, Sakadagaman, once returner, Anagaman, non-returner, and Arahant or final stage of sainthood. Each path consciousness is followed by several moments of fruition consciousness marking the tranquilization of the defilements uprooted by the preceding path moment. Both path and fruition consciousness form the supramundane aspect of the Dhamma. In this way, it can be said that the Dhamma is the actual refuge. C. The Sangha refuge. At the conventional level, Sangha means the Bhikkhu Sangha, the community of ordained monks who observe the 227 monastic rules promulgated by the Buddha and share the same, right, view. The Bhikkhu Sangha forms an unbroken lineage extending back 2,500 years, serving as custodians of the Dhamma. The Bhikkhu, almsman, lifestyle allows the Sangha to fulfill the function of preservation, perpetuation, and practice of the Buddha's teaching. However, the Bhikkhu Sangha is not the Sangha refuge. The Sangha refuge is the Arya Sangha, the noble community made up of those persons who have attained any of the four stages of sainthood. The noble disciples, Buddhist saints, are permanently free from wrong views and doubt. The Buddha's teaching has taken root in them and they do not have to depend on others for any remaining work to be done to reach the final goal. By virtue of this inner mastery, they possess the qualifications to guide others towards the goal. 6 factors that enhance the taking of refuge. The taking of refuge is an expression of one's commitment to the Triple Gem and become a bona fide Buddhist. However, this is only the verbal expression of taking refuge. The scriptures make it clear that taking refuge involves more than reciting the formula of refuge. The commentaries define the act of taking refuge as a mental act, namely, an act of consciousness devoid of defilements, motivated by confidence in and reverence for the Triple Gem, taking it as the supreme resort. So the taking of refuge should be undertaken with confidence and reverence in the Triple Gem, taking it as the supreme refuge, that it is the sole source of deliverance. 3 factors play essential roles in the act of taking refuge. A. Understanding. It is through understanding the truth of suffering that makes one look for a refuge. The mind must also be able to grasp the supreme attributes of the 3 refuges in order to arouse confidence in them. See Chapter 16 on the recollection of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Such understanding will bring a deeper commitment to the refuge and spur one towards the course of practice. B. Wholesome desire. Taking refuge is an act of volition. It is a voluntary decision based on a wholesome desire, Dhammakanda, to get rid of suffering. The stronger the desire, the more will be the urgency to practice the Buddha's teaching. C. Confidence and reverence. The faculty of wisdom must be balanced by faith. Wisdom without faith can make one easily skeptical, while faith without wisdom can make one easily gullible. In taking refuge, one's faith must be based on confidence or trust in the protective power of the 3 refuges, together with a clear understanding of their qualities and functions. Confidence gives rise to reverence, veneration born from a growing awareness of the sublime and lofty nature of the Triple Gem. As one experiences the transforming effects of the Dhamma in one's life, reverence awakens devotion to the Triple Gem, making the mind more inclined and devoted to the practice of the Buddha's teaching. 7 Corruptions and breach of refuge. Corruptions of refuge are factors that make refuge taking impure, insincere, and ineffective. There are 3 factors that defile the act of taking refuge, namely: A. Ignorance. Here one does not understand the reasons for taking refuge, the meaning of taking refuge, or the qualities of the refuge objects. B. Doubt. Here one does not possess confidence in the Triple Gem. One's commitment to the refuge is then tainted by perplexity, suspicion, and indecision. C. Wrong views. This means a wrong understanding of the act of taking refuge or the refuge objects. Here one thinks that the mere act of taking refuge is a sufficient guarantee of liberation. Or one believes that the Buddha is a God with the power to save one. Or the Dhamma teaches the existence of an eternal soul. Or the Sangha functions as an intermediary body who can mediate one's salvation. However, even though the refuge act is defiled by these corruptions, the refuge act is still intact and one remains a Buddhist follower as long as one regards the Triple Gem as his supreme resort. But one's attitude is wrong and has to be corrected by seeking proper advice from a teacher who can help one to overcome the ignorance, doubts, and wrong views. Breach of refuge is the breaking of one's commitment to the 3 refuges. This can only happen to ordinary worldlings, but not to Aryas or noble disciples whose confidence in the Triple Gem is permanently established and unshakable. For the same reason, the Arya's refuge act cannot be corrupted too. In the case of an ordinary worldling, breach of refuge occurs when the person dies and he cannot take refuge anymore. Such breach is considered faultless. Faulty or reprehensible breach occurs when one regards another teacher as superior to the Buddha, another religious system as superior to the Dhamma, or another spiritual community as superior to the Arya Sangha. Breaking the commitment to any one of the 3 refuge objects breaks the commitment to all of them. By adopting an attitude that bestows the status of supreme reliance upon anything outside the Triple Gem, one cuts off the taking of refuge and relinquishes one's claim to be a disciple of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. In order to become valid once more, the act of taking refuge must be renewed, preferably by confessing one's lapse and then by going through the entire act of taking refuge. 8 Benefits of taking refuge. By taking refuge in the Triple Gem, one declares one's willingness to be guided by the Buddha's teaching. But once we have made the initial commitment by taking refuge, it is necessary to put the teaching into actual practice, because the Buddha's teaching is not a system of salvation by faith. As discussed earlier, the simple act of taking refuge enables one to balance the wisdom faculty with confidence and devotion in the practice, thereby acting as a condition for the realization of Nibbana. For those who regularly take refuge in the Triple Gem with understanding, confidence, and reverence, that very act of refuge crushes, dispels, removes and stops their fear, sorrow, suffering, defilement and risk of unhappy rebirth. For the newcomer to the religion, the simple act of taking refuge arouses faith or saddha, the leader of wholesome mental states. In times of great distress or fear, just the chanting of Buddham Saranam Gacchami is sufficient to calm the mind by anchoring it to a powerful wholesome object. Buddhist children should be taught to take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha every night before they sleep to develop confidence and ensure freedom from nightmares and other disturbances. Once, the author asked the members of his sutta study class, some of whom are experienced yogis, what they would do if the airplane they were traveling in was about to crash. Would they close their eyes and meditate or recite the 3 refuges? The majority said that it would be easier to chant Buddham Saranam Gacchami to keep calm in such a terrifying situation. Such is the power of the 3 refuges, simple yet effective in times of need. X 5 precepts, Pancasila. 1 5 vices and 5 virtues. In many suttas regarding lay practice, Anguttara 3, 203, the Buddha explicitly warned of the 5 vices, which are dangers and enemies, and lead to hell. What are the 5? 1. Killing living beings. 2. Taking what is not given. 3. Sexual misconduct. 4. Telling lies. v. Partaking of intoxicants. One who has these 5 vices lives the home life without self-confidence. One who has these 5 vices breeds hatred in this life or breeds hatred in the life hereafter, feels in his mind pain and grief. One who has these 5 vices is termed vicious and arises in hell. In the same suttas, the Buddha spoke of the advantages of cultivation of the 5 virtues, which are the 5 precepts, namely: 1. Abstention from killing living beings. 2. Abstention from taking what is not given. 3. Abstention from sexual misconduct. 4. Abstention from telling lies. v. Abstention from partaking of intoxicants. One who has these 5 virtues lives the home life with complete self-confidence. One who has these 5 virtues breeds no hatred in this life, or in the life hereafter, nor does he feel pain and grief. One who has these 5 virtues is called virtuous and arises in the happy plane of existence. The 5 precepts or virtues, Pancasila, form the very core of moral discipline for the lay disciple. Dhammapada verse 183 summarizes the teaching of the Buddhas as, not to do any evil, to cultivate good, to purify one's mind. Thus, by learning to avoid evil through the precepts, one initially begins to check the gross defilements and avoid transgressions of bodily and verbal actions. 2. Self-responsibility in moral training. The 5 precepts form the actual practice of morality for the layman. They are the minimum ethical code, which are mandatory for all lay disciples. They are undertaken immediately after the taking of the 3 refuges at every Buddhist service or ceremony and are administered by a monk if one is present, otherwise the lay disciples can do it by themselves. It is usual for devout lay disciples to undertake the 5 precepts as part of their daily recitation. The 5 precepts are undertaken by reciting the following. 1. Panatipada Vramani Sikappadam Samadhiyami. The taking of life I undertake the training rule to abstain. 2. Adinadana Vramani Sikappadam Samadhiyami. The taking of things not given I undertake the training rule to abstain. 3. Kamisumaichakara Vramani Sikappadam Samadhiyami. Sexual misconduct I undertake the training rule to abstain. 4. Musavada Vramani Sikappadam Samadhiyami. False speech I undertake the training rule to abstain. v. Sura Mirayamahyapamadatana Vramani Sikapadam Samadayami. Intoxicating liquors, spirits, and drugs that cause heedlessness. I undertake the training rule to abstain. The words Vramani Sikapadam Samadayami mean abstinence. A training rule I undertake are shared by all five and shows that they are not commandments imposed externally, but training rules or precepts which one takes upon oneself through one's initiative and endeavors to follow with awareness and understanding. The emphasis here, as throughout the entire path, is on self-responsibility. 3 precepts are indispensable in moral training. There are some who argue that since moral training is one's own responsibility, it is enough simply to have good intentions and let oneself be guided by one's sense of what is right or wrong. Having a set of rules of conduct is at best superfluous, and worse still, they can lead to a dogmatic concept of morality or to a constricting and legalistic system of ethics. Although it is true that morality cannot be equated with a set of rules, yet these rules are necessary because they form the actual practice of morality by which one can curb the grosser forms of defilements. The precepts help to cultivate moral behavior by a process involving the substitution of opposites. The actions prohibited by the precepts, such as killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, false speech and partaking of intoxicants, are all rooted in greed, hatred and delusion, and when we succumb to them, we strengthen these evil roots that they become dominant traits. By undertaking to observe the precepts, we weaken the grip of these evil roots by dispelling them with wholesome mental volitions. Consequently, a process of substitution takes place in which the defilements are replaced by wholesome or moral states, which increasingly become more ingrained as we go on with the training. Each time the precepts are upheld, each time the moral volitions become strengthened, until eventually morality becomes a habitual trait through the condition of repetition, asavana pakaya. The cultivation of good traits takes place by habitual recurrence, and many passages are found in the scriptures exhorting wholesome cultivation by repetition. Thus, even though at first, a practice arouses resistance from within, if it is repeated over and over again with understanding and development, the qualities it calls into play, such as wholesome volitions in the case of precepts, slowly become the dominant mental trait. Therefore, the 5 precepts are indispensable in the cultivation of virtue for the lay disciple. 4 Dhamma way to compare oneself with another. Once when the Buddha was in the village of Viladvara in Kosala country, he was asked by the villagers to teach them how to attain to the heavenly world where the virtuous are reborn. Thereupon the Buddha taught them to reflect on the Dhamma way to compare oneself with another, which leads to right understanding in the observance of the 5 precepts. On the matter of killing, every person wishes to live and not to die, everyone is fond of pleasure and adverse to pain. If someone were to kill us, it would not be pleasing or delightful to us. Also, if one kills another who wants to live and not to die, it would not be pleasing or delightful to the other person. So something that is not pleasing to oneself must also be not pleasing to another. Therefore, something that is not pleasing to oneself should not be imposed on another. As a result of this reflection, he himself abstains from killing living beings. He encourages others so to abstain, and he speaks in praise of so abstaining. Thus his bodily conduct is absolutely pure in these 3 aspects. By similar reflection and reasoning, one acquires a better understanding and appreciation of each of the precepts. In the case of the 5th precept, although the partaking of intoxicants appears to involve oneself only, it is the most dangerous because it can lead to the violation of all the precepts, thereby causing more harm to oneself and others. Thus, one who keeps the 5 precepts is an asset to oneself and others. In fact, in Anguttara 4:245, the Buddha has compared the meticulous observance of the 5 precepts as 5 great gifts. By doing so, one gives fearlessness, loving-kindness, and goodwill to all beings by one's virtues. 5 First precept, abstention from killing living beings. The word panatipata is derived from 2 words, pana, which means living being, and atipata, which means striking down, hence killing or destroying. According to the Athasalini or Expositor, for killing to take place 5 conditions must be met. 1. The being must be alive. 2. There must be knowledge that it is a living being. 3. There must be intention to cause its death. 4. Action must be taken to cause its death. v. Death must result from such action. If all these conditions are fulfilled, then the precept has been broken. Conditions for killing. The first important point to note is that there must be an intention or volition to kill. Volition is the mental factor responsible for the action, kamma. Without intention, there is no transgression, as when we accidentally kill an ant while trying to pull it away from our body to prevent it from biting us. Killing is classified as immoral bodily action since it generally occurs via the body, but what really performs the act is the mind using the body as its instrument. The second important point is that the action taken to cause death need not occur directly through the body. It can be carried out by giving a command to kill by way of words, writing or gesture. The one who issues such a command becomes responsible for the action as soon as it achieves the intention of killing a living being. In extreme cases, killing can be effected by occult practices or supernormal powers. The third important point to note is that the precept is broken only when one is aware that the object of one's action is a living being. Thus, if someone washes vegetables without knowing that there are caterpillars on the leaves and kills them, the precept is not broken. Lastly, the being must die as a result of this action. Thus, if a killer is chasing his victim with a knife intent on killing him, but the latter accidentally trips on a rock and breaks his head, resulting in death, although the victim died, his death was accidental and no killing has taken place. Causes of killing. Acts of killing can originate from all three evil roots of greed, hatred, and delusion. The proximate cause of killing is always hatred accompanied by delusion, because the force that drives the act is the impulse to destroy the being's life, a form of hatred. Although greed and hate cannot function simultaneously, greed accompanied by delusion can be the motivating factor in cases of killing to gain material benefits or high status for oneself, to eliminate threats to one's comfort and security, and to obtain enjoyment in hunting and fishing for sport. Killing motivated by hatred is seen in cases of vicious murder and manslaughter. Killing motivated by delusion is seen in cases of animal sacrifices done out of wrong views and killing the followers of other religions thinking it is a religious duty. Factors affecting the gravity of the act of killing. The gravity of the act of killing depends mainly on the qualities of the victim. When the qualities are equal, the gravity varies according to the strength of the defilements and the efforts of the killer. With regard to moral qualities, human victims are said to possess moral qualities while animal victims are said to possess no moral quality, so the killing of a human is graver than the killing of an animal. Among humans, the most serious or gravest is the killing of one's mother, father, or an arahant. To kill a person with superior spiritual qualities or to kill one's benefactor is more blameworthy than to kill an immoral or an unrelated person. In the case of animal victims, the gravity of the act generally depends on its size. The larger the animal, the more blameworthy the killing. Other factors that determine moral gravity are, whether it has an owner or is ownerless, domesticated or wild, gentle or vicious temperament. The moral gravity would be greater in the three former cases and lesser in the latter three. With regard to defilements and effort, a cold-blooded murder, intended and planned in advance and rooted in strong greed or hatred, carries more weight compared to impulsive killing carried out in a fit of rage or in self-defense. The unwholesome volitions involved in the thinking and planning of the murder far outweigh those involved in an impulsive killing. The presence of cruelty or torture and the obtaining of sadistic pleasure from the killing further increase its gravity. 6th precept, abstention from taking what is ot given. The word adina means what is not given and signifies the property of another in which he has legal and blameless ownership. Thus no offense is committed if the article has no legal owner, such as firewood collected to make a fire or fruits gathered from the wilds. Blameless ownership becomes applicable in cases where a person has legal possession of an article but does so by improper means or uses it for unethical purposes, e.g. the confiscation of property of drug traffickers, weapons, which are used for destructive purposes. According to the Athasalini, 5 conditions must be met to break this precept. 1. An article belonging to another legally and blamelessly. 2. Knowledge that the article belongs to another. 3. There must be the intention to steal. 4. Action must be taken to steal. V. By the action, the article must be taken. Types of taking what is not given. Taking what is not given can be divided into many types. I. The most blatant, involving threats or force, are daylight robbery, extortion, purse snatching, kidnapping. 2. The second type is stealing or secretly taking the article without the owner's knowledge, such as housebreaking, burglary and pickpocketing. 3. The third type is fraud, laying false claims or cheating by confidence tricksters to gain someone's possessions. 4. The fourth type is deceit, when dishonest traders cheat their customers by false weights and measures or supply products of lower quality than specified. V. The fifth type is forgery, when people pass counterfeit money as real or sell counterfeit gold and jewelry. 6. The last type, though seemingly slight, is very common and occurs when employees take small items from their company for their own use without paying for it. Causes of taking what is not given. The act of taking what is not given can be rooted in greed or hatred, both being accompanied by delusion. Generally, stealing is caused by greed. Hatred occurs when one person deprives another of an article. Not so much because he wants it, but because he resents the other's possession of it and wants to make the victim suffer through its loss. Factors affecting the gravity of taking what is not given. The gravity of the act of taking what is not given is determined mainly by the moral qualities of the victim and the value of the article taken. Firstly, stealing from a morally virtuous person or a benefactor is more blameworthy than stealing from an immoral person or an unrelated person. Secondly, stealing a valuable article is more blameworthy than stealing an article of little value. However, the value of an article need not be equated to its cash value. Thus, stealing an alms bowl from a meditative monk who uses it to collect food is definitely more severe than stealing several $1,000s from a rich man. Similarly, stealing the lecture notes from a student preparing for his exams will cause more grief to the victim than stealing his TV set. The mental volitions behind the action and the force of defilements also contribute to the gravity of the act, with hatred being considered more severe than greed. 7th Third precept, abstention from sexual misconduct. This precept enjoins abstinence from improper or illicit sexual relations. The Athasalini defines sexual misconduct as the volition arising in the body door, through the unlawful intention of trespassing upon a person to whom one has no right of going. There are 4 conditions for wrong conduct in sexual pleasures. 1. There must be a man or woman with whom it is improper to have sexual intercourse. 2. There must be intention to have sexual intercourse with such a person. 3. Action must be taken to have such an intercourse. 4. There must be enjoyment from contact of the sexual organs. With reference to the first condition, there are 20 kinds of women with whom men should have no sexual relations. They can be divided into 3 groups, namely, women under the guardianship of parents, family members, relatives, and authorities charged with their care. Married or betrothed women, bhikkhunis, and religious women observing the holy life. For all women, a man forbidden by tradition or under religious rules is prohibited as a partner. For any unwilling partner who is drugged or forced to have sexual intercourse under threat of violence or coercion, conditions 2 and 4 exclude them from violation of the precept. Causes of sexual misconduct. The root cause of sexual misconduct is always greed or lust, accompanied by delusion. Factors affecting the gravity of sexual misconduct. The gravity of the offense is determined by the degree of lust motivating the action and the qualities of the person against whom the transgression is committed. When the lust is very strong, even incest and rape can be committed, the most serious being the rape of a female arahant. 8th Fourth precept, abstention from false speech. The characteristic of lying or falsehood is the volition of one desirous of representing to others an untrue thing as true, which sets up a corresponding intimation. 4 conditions must be met to break this precept. 1. The statement must be untrue. 2. there must be an intention to deceive. 3. An effort must be made to deceive. 4. The other person must know the meaning of what is expressed. False speech is expressed through speech, writing, or bodily gestures, or even conveyed through a third party who may or may not be aware of the falsehood. Since intention is required, if someone makes a false statement believing it to be true, no transgression has occurred. But if one makes a false statement with intention to deceive and the other party understands what is expressed, then the precept is broken whether deception has occurred or not. Causes of false speech. The root causes of false speech are greed, hatred, and delusion. 1. Greed is the root cause when false speech is used to obtain material gain or status for oneself or someone dear to oneself. 2. Hatred is the root cause when false speech is used to cause loss and bring harm and suffering to others. 3. Delusion is the root cause when it is used neither for one's gain nor to cause loss and harm to others, but for the sake of enjoyment, such as lying for the sake of a joke, exaggeration to spice up a story, or flattery to please others, etc. Gravity of the act of false speech. The gravity of the act of false speech depends on 3 factors, namely, degree of benefits destroyed, motivation and recipient of the false speech. 1. The gravity is light if little benefit is destroyed and heavy if a large benefit is destroyed as a result of the false speech. 2. Falsehood is also less severe if the motivation is to save oneself or another from material loss or harm, while it becomes more severe if the motivation is to cause material loss or harm to others. 3. With regard to the recipient of the false speech, the gravity is greater if the recipient is a morally superior person or is one's benefactor, while the gravity is less if the recipient has low moral qualities. 4. The worst cases of falsehood are lying in a way that defames the Buddha and the Arahants, or making false claims of attainments of jhana, mental absorptions, or magga and phala, path and fruition. In the case of a monk, such falsehood leads to expulsion from the Sangha. 9. Fifth precept, abstention from partaking of intoxicants. The taking of intoxicants is defined as the volition leading to the bodily act of ingesting the intoxicant, such as the drinking of alcohol, smoking of opium and marijuana, sniffing of cocaine or glue, injection of heroin into the veins, etc. There are 4 conditions for the partaking of intoxicants. 1. There must be an intoxicant. 2. There must be the intention of taking it. 3. Action must be taken to ingest it. 4. There must be actual ingestion of the intoxicant. Condition 4 states clearly that the precept is broken once the intoxicant is ingested intentionally. It does not matter whether one is intoxicated or not as a result of the action. In taking medicines containing alcohol or intoxicating drugs for medical reasons, no breach of the precept is committed. This is because one's intention is to take the medicine to cure one's sickness. Concerning the use of alcohol in medicine by monks, the Buddha allowed strong drink to be added to decoctions of oil as medicine. However, certain monks used to add too much strong drink into their decoctions and they got drunk after consuming the medicinal oils. To prevent this from happening, the Buddha allowed monks to drink decoctions of oil containing strong drink in them, provided neither the color, nor the smell, nor the taste of strong drink shall be sensible or detectable. Vinaya texts, Mahavagga 14. Thus the drinking of herbal wines containing mainly hard liquor or the adding of alcohol to food to enhance its taste should be discouraged, even though some may think that there is no violation of the precept here. Knowing that it is an intoxicant and still taking it for its flavor/taste shows that one is not practicing self-control. As for alcoholic herbal products, one should switch to equivalent products that do not contain alcohol. It is known that intoxicants even in small amounts can make one less sensitive, heedless, and easily swayed by the defilements. As one starts to enjoy getting high on intoxicants, the effect becomes addictive and usage increases. Then, either they dull the mind or heighten the defilements that one loses the sense of shame and fear in performing immoral activities. Without shame and fear, there is no morality and a person loses all restraints in his conduct. Indeed, the breaking of the fifth precept is the most dangerous as it can lead to the breaking of all the remaining precepts. Abstaining from intoxicants therefore prevents the misfortunes that result from the use of intoxicants, namely, loss of wealth, quarrels and crimes, disease, loss of reputation through shameless behavior, negligence, and madness. Causes of partaking of intoxicants. The motivation for taking intoxicants is greed accompanied by delusion. No gradations of moral weight are given. 10 benefits of moderate drinking, fact or fallacy. Several studies have shown that people who drink 1 to 2 ounces of alcohol per day tend to live longer than people who drink more than this amount or who don't drink at all. 1 ounce of alcohol is equivalent to a 30 ml glass of wine, 1 can of beer or 1 mixed drink. Based on these findings, some physicians even began to encourage their patients to drink moderately. In his 1991 widely acclaimed book entitled Program for Reversing Heart Disease, pages 277-278, the famous heart physician, Dr. Dean Ornish refuted this fallacy by citing the following facts. 1. First, subsequent, more careful analyses of the studies revealed that many of the people who did not drink at all chose to abstain because a number of them were in ill health or were recovering alcoholics. They died earlier not because they abstained from alcohol but because they were sicker to begin with. 2. Second, one reason why people who drink moderately may have lived longer is that they often have more social support than the non-drinkers. In Western culture, happy hour is a socially acceptable way to take a break from work and relax with friends, family, or spouses. Dr. Ornish suspects that the same benefits would also result from social support in activities not centered on drinking. 3. Third, alcohol has a direct, toxic effect on the muscle of the heart, as well as other organs, especially the liver. Even drinking less than 1 drink per day has been found to double the risk of hemorrhagic stroke when compared with not drinking at all. A study of 87,526 female nurses found that women who consumed 3 to 9 drinks per week had 3.7 times the risk of bleeding into their brains compared with non-drinkers. 4th, in America, somewhere between 50 and 80% of all fatal traffic accidents are alcohol-related, see news clip below. 5th, although alcohol does raise your HDL, good cholesterol, this is only half the story. There are 2 types of HDL, namely, HDL2 and HDL3. HDL2 helps to protect against coronary heart disease but HDL3 does not. Alcohol raises HDL3. 6th, a study of over 7,188 women aged 25 to 74 years found that moderate alcohol consumption was associated with 50 and 100% elevation in the risk of breast cancer. Responsible drinking proponent jailed Sunday Star, August 13, 2000, Seattle, USA. A prominent U.S. author who championed moderate drinking over abstinence as a way to handle alcoholism was sentenced on Friday to 4 years and 6 months in jail for a deadly car crash she caused while driving drunk. During the trial in Ellensburg, Washington, Audrey Kishline, 43, had pleaded guilty to driving while intoxicated in April and crashing her small truck head-on into a car whose 2 occupants were killed. Kishline had 3 times the legal limit of alcohol in her blood and was driving east in the westbound lanes of alcohol in her blood and was driving east in the westbound lanes of your daughter. 6 years ago, Kishline the National Moderation Founded Management, movement after finding abstinence-based programs, such as Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, demoralizing. Instead of accepting the AA rule that alcoholism is a lifelong affliction that can only be handled with constant sobriety, Kishline advocated a theory of responsible drinking. She outlined her ideas in the 1995 book Moderate Drinking, the Moderation Management Guide for people who want to reduce their drinking. Members were asked to follow a 9-step program that includes 30 days of abstinence, followed by the establishment of personal drinking limits. The guidelines also specify a zero tolerance for drinking and driving. DPA. 11 factors that enhance the keeping of precepts. The abstentions of the 5 precepts are basically the mental factors of right action, right speech, and right livelihood. They are accompanied by wholesome volitions called morality of volition that dispels the unwholesome intentions to break the precepts. Thus, morality does not function alone. It has a number of associates that function together to form the properties of morality. The mental factors that help to uphold the keeping of precepts are moral shame and fear, faith, understanding, mindfulness, effort, and patience. Moral shame, hiri, and moral fear, adapa, to do evil are the proximate causes of morality. Shame makes a person recoil from committing immoral deeds because a good man does not want his conscience to be defiled by evil. Fear stops one from evil because of fear of the dire consequences. Without them, morality neither arises nor persists. They differentiate man from beast and prevent mankind from committing acts of bestiality even at the time of very low civilization. So hiri and adapa are known as Lokapala Dhamma, Dhamma that guards the world. Faith, sada, is belief in the law of karma, i.e. good results will follow the good deeds of keeping the precepts, while breaking the precepts will lead to suffering. Faith cleanses the mind of impurities that motivate the breaking of precepts. The keeping of precepts should not be undertaken as a blind dogmatic submission to external rules but as a fully conscious process of moral training guided by understanding, panna. Once we understand for ourselves what kinds of actions are wholesome and unwholesome, why one should be pursued and the other abandoned, and the consequences of keeping and breaking the precepts, we will begin to appreciate and observe the precepts properly. Mindfulness, sati, is awareness or attentiveness of our bodily and mental processes. With mindfulness, one is able to check what feelings and states of mind that are impelling one towards certain courses of action and what thoughts form the motivation or volition. One who is mindful will not forget his undertaking of the precepts, so one can avoid the unwholesome and develop the wholesome. Effort, virya, here means right effort, the application of energy to steer the mind away from unwholesome states towards wholesome states. Effort does the work of moral training guided by mindfulness and understanding. The last factor is patience, khanti, which is non-hate. Patience enables one to endure the offensive actions of others without becoming angry or seeking retaliation, thereby curbing the defilements of greed and hatred, the root causes of transgressions of precepts. 12 Consequences of breaking and keeping the 5 precepts. According to the Discourse on the Bad Effects of Evil Deeds, Anguttara 4, 247, breaking of precepts when pursued, practiced, increased, causes one to arise in hell, in the animal world and in the world of ghosts. If reborn as a human being, the following are the very least results. Killing will lead to shortening of one's life. Stealing will lead to loss of one's wealth. Sexual misconduct will breed rivalry and hatred. False speech will cause one to be falsely accused. Partaking of intoxicants will cause one to be afflicted with insanity. On the other hand, the observance of the 5 precepts leads to the accumulation of wholesome karma tending to rebirth in the happy realms of humans or deities. If reborn as a human being, the following are the results. Abstention from killing will lead to longevity. Abstention from stealing will lead to prosperity. Abstention from sexual misconduct will lead to popularity. Abstention from lying will cause one to have a good reputation. Abstention from partaking of intoxicants will lead to mindfulness and wisdom. In the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the Buddha expounded to the villagers of Patalagama the 5 blessings gained by one who observes the precepts and who is established in morality. 1. He acquires much wealth as a result of his diligence. 2. He acquires a good reputation and fame. 3. He approaches and enters any assembly of nobles, Brahmins, householders, and monks with complete self-confidence, without any fear or hesitation. 4. He lives the full span of life and dies undeluded. After death, he is reborn in the happy realms of humans or devas.